King Charles paid a heartfelt tribute to those who had taken part in the D-Day landings, praising them for replacing tyranny with freedom. "We are eternally in their debt," the King told an 80th anniversary commemoration. He was speaking in Portsmouth, one of the key departure points of the Normandy landings in June 1944. The King hailed the courage, resilience and solidarity of those who had taken part in D-Day and whose numbers were now dwindling to so few. King Charles, with Queen Camilla and the Prince of Wales, were addressing a national D-Day commemoration held on Southsea Common. He hailed the greatest amphibious operation in history and the courage of those who must have questioned if they could survive. The King said their efforts to end brutal totalitarianism must never be forgotten, and he called on the present generation to honour those who have died in ways that live up to the freedom they died for, by balancing rights with civic responsibilities. Portsmouth was one of the embarkation points on the south coast 80 years ago, as Allied forces crossed the Channel to liberate France and Western Europe from Nazi occupation. The commemorative event heard from those who took part in D-Day, including Ray Howard, who had landed in Normandy on the 6th of June at the age of 19. Mr. Hayward said he wanted to remember those who had fought for democracy and to ensure their story is never forgotten. Prince William delivered a poignant reading from the diary of Captain Alistair Bannerman, in which the soldier remembered his family as he headed towards the French coast on the morning of D-Day. This year, 23 surviving D-Day veterans are travelling for commemorations in Normandy, and a further 21 will be at a memorial event at the National Memorial Arboretum in Staffordshire. There were 225 D-Day veterans able to travel to Normandy 5 years ago, and the Royal British Legion had said that these poignant commemorations will be our last opportunity to host a significant number of Normandy veterans. Last week, the King met one of the veterans of the Normandy landings, Jim Miller, who at the age of 20 had gone ashore at Juno Beach. The King invited Mr. Miller to Buckingham Palace to personally hand him his 100th birthday card. "I'm humbled to reach such a great number, especially when I think of those who fell on Normandy beaches all those years ago," Mr. Miller said afterwards. The King will travel to France for a commemorative event on Thursday at the British Normandy Memorial at Ver-sur-Mer. An international ceremony with more than 25 heads of state will be attended by Prince William. The act of corroboration has been challenged in the past. Most recently, in 2011, a report into Scotland's justice system recommended that corroborated evidence should no longer be required in criminal cases, although the Scottish Government later decided to not make the formal change. The owner of the hit online game Wordle is legally challenging a geography-based spin-off game called worldle. In the filing, the New York Times, which purchased Wordle for a seven-figure sum in 2022, accuses its near namesake of creating confusion and attempting to capitalise on the enormous goodwill associated with its own brand. But the creator of Worldle, software developer Corey McDonald, is vowing to fight back on the grounds that there are many other games with similar titles. "There's a whole industry of dottle games," he told the BBC. "Wordle is about words, worldle is about the world, flaggle is about flags," he pointed out. The New York Times disagrees. Worldle is nearly identical in appearance, sound, meaning, and imparts the same commercial impression to Wordle, it says in its legal document. British inventor Josh Wardle developed Wordle in 2021 as a side project to keep his girlfriend entertained, but since then it became a behemoth, reaching millions of people worldwide. By contrast, around 100,000 people play Worldle every month, according to Mr. McDonald, who is based in Seattle. It is not available as an app and can only be played via a web browser. It contains ads with an option to play ad-free for £10 per year, but Mr. McDonald says that most of the money he makes from the game goes to Google because he uses Google Street View images, which players have to try to identify. He chooses a different one himself every evening for a new game the following day. "It's pretty humbling to think that so many people play every month," he said. "I didn't expect it to have this sort of success at all." He's not the only one riding on the coattails of Worldle's success. Others include Quordle, a set of 4 words to guess at the same time, Nerdle, a maths-based challenge, Hurdle, which is based on identifying music. There's even another game called worldle, which involves identifying countries by their outlines. The New York Times declined to say whether it intended to pursue them as well. They said it's heard of games. Jonathan Knight said, "Imitations were the best form of flattery. We've always been fine with similar games and think that they just keep the game fresh and alive for people. This is not, though, the first time the New York Times has resorted to the courts to protect its prize game. In March 2024, a Shetland dialect version of worldle said it would be shutting down following a copyright challenge from the publishing group. Professor David Levine, a copyright expert at Elon University School of Law, suggested the writing might be on the wall for Mr. McDonald's project too. He said the one letter difference between the two names was potentially problematic, and added that there were also other aspects of likely consumer confusion. You've got the pronunciation. I mean, I have to make an effort here to say wordle versus worldle. Mr. McDonald said he was disappointed legal action was being taken against him, but insisted he was undaunted. I'm just a one-man operation here, so I was kind of surprised. Worst case scenario, we'll change the name, but I think we'll be okay. New banknotes featuring the portrait of King Charles III have now entered circulation, but it may be some time before they're commonly seen in wallets and purses. The new Bank of England notes will gradually replace those which are damaged or will be issued when demand increases. The King is only the second monarch to appear on these notes, with Queen Elizabeth II first featuring in 1960. Shoppers can still use current circulating £5, £10, £20 and £50 notes carrying the portrait of the late Queen. The reverse side of current polymer Bank of England banknotes, which in turn ascending order feature Sir Winston Churchill, Jane Austen, J.M.W. Turner and Alan Turing, are unchanged. Notes issued in Scotland and Northern Ireland feature other images and not the monarch. The first new banknotes were printed last year, with the long lead-in time allowing automated machines that accept cash to be updated to recognise the new designs. The King's portrait is based on a picture taken in 2013. In April last year, they were given exclusive access to the highly secure site where the notes are being produced. A year on, the King was presented with a full set with the lowest serial numbers, following the tradition of the monarch receiving the first issues of new banknotes. Collectors seek banknotes which come as close to the 00001 serial number as possible. While the King is appearing on banknotes, cash may be disappearing from our lives. This is a historic moment as it's the first time we've changed the sovereign on our notes, said Bank of England Governor Andrew Bailey. We know that cash is important for many people, and we are committed to providing banknotes for as long as the public demand them. But a survey for Link, the UK's cash access and ATM network, found that nearly half, at 48% of those asked, said they expected a cashless society during their lifetime. However, the same proportion said this would be problematic, and 71% of those surveyed said they had still had some level of everyday reliance on cash. Yet figures from Consumer Association Which found that 6,000 bank branches had closed in the last 9 years, leaving many places with none at all and limited access to cash. 50 of them now have banking hubs, shared premises, often run by the post office, where customers of any bank can withdraw and deposit cash, and where community workers from different banks visit once a week. One of the more unusual is in the harbour town of Looe in Cornwall, a county with rich connections to King Charles. The hub is found behind a cafe and heritage centre and underneath a top restaurant, where the entrance to a climbing wall used to be. People can come to take money out, put money in, and they can deposit cheques. We give change for local businesses, said Debbie Young, manager at the hub. People come to pay their bills and top up their gas and electric. With the last bank having closed 18 months ago, the hub is a lifeline, according to Ange Harrison, who manages the coffee shop in front of the hub. Obviously, you can bank your cash right away. You don't have to worry about having cash on the premises, said Miss Harrison, a former fishmonger who has lived in Looe all of her life. For all the businesses in town, they need to use it. You know that old saying, if you don't use it, you are going to lose it. That was true too of cash, and she said people were curious to see the new banknotes featuring the King. Post office branches where the notes will be available first are at Piccadilly Plaza in Manchester, the M21BB, Sunderland City, Portsmouth, Birmingham, City of London, Moorgate, Broadway, Great Massingham, Tetbury, Mitchinghampton, Windsor, Houndsditch, Woodstock and Palmbury. It will be a slow change for our change, but there are still longer term questions over the future of notes and coins. Where the King's image now features, coins December 2022, millions of 50p coins with the King's image entered circulation. Other new coins designs, such as a B on the pound coin, were introduced towards the end of 2023. Stamps in March 2023. The first King Charles stamps were issued by Royal Mail as part of the special set. The following month, the new regular first and second class stamps were issued, showing the King without his crown. Passports, July 2023. British passports in the name of His Majesty rather than Her Majesty were issued. Official portrait January 2024. Public buildings such as town halls and courts were offered an official photo of the monarch taken at Windsor Castle. Tudor crown February 2024. King Charles' preferred design of crown was introduced in places such as the gov.uk website and official buildings. Banknotes. June 2024. The Bank of England issues £5, £10, £20 and £50 banknotes with the King's portrait based on a picture taken in 2013. And postboxes. These are the only changed when they are damaged or scheduled for extensive repair, meaning they are still examples from Queen Victoria's reign. This looks likely to be one of the public symbols slower to change. Australia has abandoned a legal battle to have graphic footage of a church stabbing in Sydney removed from Elon Musk's social media platform X. Declared a terror incident by police, the attack on Bishop Mari Emmanuel in April was live-streamed online and led to riots outside the Christ the Good Shepherd Church in Wakeley. Australia's e-safety commissioner, an independent regulator, threatened X and other social media companies with hefty fines if they did not remove videos of the stabbing, concerned it could incite further violence. The case was seen as a test of Australia's ability to enforce its online safety laws on the social media giants. The federal court had temporarily ordered X hide the videos, but it refused to comply, saying the order was not valid. X, formerly Twitter, did eventually block access to the video in Australia, but users could easily get around this by using a VPN. But Commissioner Julie Inman-Grant, who herself once worked for Twitter, had asked for the video to be removed globally, prompting Mr Musk to call her a censorship commissar. Australian Prime Minister Anthony Albanese responded by labelling Musk an arrogant billionaire. In a statement on Wednesday, Ms Inman-Grant said owing to multiple considerations, dropping the case was likely to achieve the most positive outcome for the online safety of all Australians, especially children. Our sole goal and focus is issuing our removal notice was to prevent this extremely violent footage from going viral, potentially inciting further violence and inflicting more harm on the Australian community. She added that she stood by the decisions the e-safety commissioner had made, and the Minister for Communication, Michelle Rowland, said the same in Parliament on Wednesday afternoon. In a statement on X, the firm's global government affairs team said they were heartened to see that freedom of speech has prevailed. It had previously argued the Commission's orders were unlawful and dangerous. Global takedown orders go against the very principles of a free and open internet and threaten free speech everywhere, it said in a statement. This was a tragic event and we do not allow people to praise it or call for further violence. Ms Inman-Grant on Wednesday told the Australian Broadcasting Corporation that Mr Musk's attention resulted in a pile-on from his millions of followers, which included death threats and the personal information of her children being exposed online. India stocks have fallen sharply after vote counting in the country's general election indicated Prime Minister Narendra Modi's party might not be able to form a majority government. The benchmark NSE Nifty 50 share index closed down nearly 6%, its steepest fall since India's first COVID lockdowns in March 2020. Early results suggest Mr Modi's political party may need to rely on allies and form a coalition government. That could lead to uncertainty over economic policies, some analysts said. The NSE Nifty 50, which comprises stocks in various big companies, had plunged 8.5% at one point, but ended the day down 5.9% at 21.884.5 points. The S&P BSE Sensex also fell sharply, closing 5.7% lower at 72,079.05. The rupee slid 0.5% against the US dollar, its biggest fall in 16 months. More than half the votes have been counted in India's general election, and Mr Modi's Bharatiya Janata Party BJP looks unlikely to secure a majority in the 543-member lower house of parliament. It may have to rely on allies in the National Democratic Alliance (NDA) to form the next government. Analysts suggest that could lead to some uncertainty over economic policies, such as a push for investment, which has been one of the mainstays of the Modi government's rule. The key question is whether BJP can retain its single party majority. Ken Peng, head of investment strategy Asia at Citi Global Wealth, has said, if not, then would its coalition be able to deliver economic development, particularly infrastructure? Puneet Sharma, chief executive and fund manager at Space Alpha, said that if the new government is dependent on coalition partners, it may shift its focus to put more emphasis on welfare rather than concentrating on reforms during the July budget. The Hindu nationalist BJP won majorities in 2014 and 2019. Markets had soared on Monday after exit polls over the weekend had suggested Mr Modi and the BJP would gain a significant victory, but it now looks as though the BJP will fall short of achieving a majority by itself. Market analyst Fiona Chincotta has said that key Indian stock indexes had been really battered. She added that there had been some very big fallers in individual stocks, including oil and gas firm Reliance Industries and Bank of India. A second murder by a man who had killed before has been described as horrific but rare by the probation service. Liam Jones, aged 45, inflicted at least 37 injuries on disabled father of 5 Philip Breach in Oxford in November 2022. He had been jailed for another man's murder in 2002, but was released on parole in 2021. A parole board spokesman said its reviews were undertaken thoroughly and with extreme care. Jones was jailed for life again, with a minimum of 37 years at Reading Crown Court last month. A probation service spokesperson said, "This was a horrific crime and our thoughts remain with the family of Philip Breach. Serious further offences, SFOs, like this one, are rare but have a devastating impact on victims and their families, which is why each one is thoroughly investigated so we can improve the work we do to keep the public safe. They understand there is a review into the case which has been completed and will be presented to the Breach family. Fewer than 0.5% of people under probation service supervision go on to commit SFOs, according to government figures." The parole board spokesman said its decisions were solely focused on what risk a prisoner could represent to the public if released and whether that risk is manageable in the community. A panel will carefully examine a huge range of evidence, including details of the original crime and any evidence of behavioural change, as well as explore the harm done and impact the crime has had on victims. Members read and digest hundreds of pages of evidence and reports in the lead-up to an oral hearing. He said evidence from witnesses such as probation officers, psychiatrists and psychologists, officials supervising the offender in prison, as well as victim personal statements may be given at a hearing. It is standard for the prisoner and witnesses to be questioned at length during the hearing, which often lasts a full day or more. Parole reviews are undertaken thoroughly and with extreme care. Protecting the public is our number one priority. Mr Breach, aged 59, was making his way back from the co-op shop in Wood Farm Park after buying a newspaper and a chocolate bar when he was attacked. Body-worn video footage from a police officer patrolling the murder scene hours after the attack showed Jones asking him about what had happened. He told the officer, "I hope they're alright, whoever it is," before cycling off. He was arrested the next day. Sentencing Jones, Mr Justice Murray said he was sure he had meant to kill Mr Breach. He said while the killing was different to his knife attack on a man in Southampton in February 2002, there were striking coincidences, including their savage nature. He said Jones of Bonar Road, Oxford, must serve every single day of 37 years before he could ever be considered for release by the parole board. If he ever is released, Jones will remain on licence and could be recalled. Rising global conflict means countries will spend the next 10 years restocking arms, the boss of one of the UK's largest weapons manufacturers has said. Chemring, which describes itself as a key supplier to NATO, said countries are reacting to the wars in Gaza and Ukraine, as well as increasingly assertive China. The firm wants sales, which are already hovering above record levels, to quadruple to nearly £1 billion by 2030. The increase in geopolitical tensions around the world is driving a fundamental rearmament upcycle, which is expected to last for at least the next decade, said Chemring Chief Executive Michael Ort. The company builds aerospace, defence and security technology for nations all over the world. It also develops parts for space, travel and electronic warfare products. The firm made its forecast as it reported results for the 6 months to 30th April, which shows that sales jumped by 8% to £223.4 million. However, pre-tax profits sank by nearly a third to £15.2 million, which the company said was because of bad weather at one of its sites in Tennessee, as well as costs related to its pension scheme. Commenting on the current environment, Chemring said that European allies, both NATO and non-NATO members, are increasing defence spending to replenish their own stocks after providing assistance to Ukraine, which is entering the third year of war with Russia. It is also pointed to a recent announcement by Prime Minister Rishi Sunak to increase defence spending to 2.5% of gross domestic product, GDP, by the end of the decade. Labour leader Sir Keir Starmer has also committed to lifting spending to 2.5% of GDP if the party wins the general election, without setting a deadline. According to the latest government figures, total UK defence exports surged 70% to £11.2 billion from 2021 to 2022, primarily to new contracts to the Middle East and Europe. Some political parties and campaigners have raised concerns about the role of UK defence companies in overseas conflicts. The SNP, the Liberal Democrats and protest groups are calling on the UK to stop selling arms to Israel. Lord Cameron, the Foreign Secretary, said last month the ban would only strengthen Hamas, adding the UK supplies just 1% of Israel's weapons. Ministers have said that all applications for a licence to export military equipment and related items are assessed against a set of criteria, including the risk that the items might be used to commit or facilitate internal repression. A true legend of windsurfing who died suddenly in France has been described as one of life's good guys. Farrell O'Shea, who was originally from Wellington, Shropshire, but moved to the Gwynedd coast in the 1980s, was a pioneer in the sport and a successful businessman. The 60-year-old wrote an influential guide to windsurfing and founded the O'Shea Surfing and Windsurfing brand, which was based in Fewelly. He developed some technical moves in the sport and held the British speed record at 51.2 knots. Sarah Davis, who holds world records in speed windsurfing, was with him at an event in La Palme, southern France, when he was taken ill walking up the beach on Sunday. He had just broken another record for the discipline of wingfoil. He died doing what he loved. Miss Davis added, "Farrell was my mentor, my inspiration, and my friend. He had a clever, dry wit and never failed to make you smile. He was generous to all with his time and unrivaled knowledge of speed windsurfing, a true legend of the sport." She said Mr. O'Shea loved water sports and a cup of tea, possibly in equal measure. He was deeply loved and will be missed by so many family and friends around the world. The O'Shea Surf Company said their founder was one of life's good guys. He was deeply loved by so many and will be forever in our hearts, they wrote. Social media tributes have also flooded in from water sports centres across the country. SUP North Wales, a water sports tour company based in Gwynedd, said Mr. O'Shea was one of the most down-to-earth and unassuming people. He'd always drop everything, put the kettle on and sit down for a chat. A very sad loss for the world of windsurfing and stand-up paddleboarding. Knockburn Sports Lot in Aberdeenshire, Scotland, added, "He was an absolute fantastic, well-mannered and considerate man. It will always be a pleasure to see you all riding his board, which are a huge legacy to this fantastic human being." Asda's fuel has become the priciest among supermarket groups after years of becoming among the cheapest despite its pledge to offer the best value, research suggests. According to the RAC, average petrol and diesel prices were higher at Asda at the end of May than at Tesco, Morrisons and Sainsbury's. Asda disputed the findings, saying they covered its whole estate, including convenience shops, and that it still had the best prices at supermarket forecourts. Global fuel prices are falling, but the RAC said supermarket chains were not passing the savings on to customers. The RAC analysed data submitted by the biggest supermarkets to the Competition and Markets Authority and found that Asda was selling petrol at 146.34 pence per litre and diesel at 151.71 pence. By contrast, Tesco, Morrisons and Sainsbury's were charging 144.45 pence and 149.61 pence per litre, some 1.9 pence and 2.1 pence less. RAC Senior Policy Officer Rod Dennis said it was the first time since the motoring group began tracking supermarket fuel prices that Asda had come out as priciest. He added that the chain had for years been the market leader on fuel prices, encouraging its rivals to drop their prices after it did, but that it had now lost its crown. Mr. Dennis added that with fuel prices falling, Asda was unlikely to regain its position at any time soon, as rivals were likely to lower their prices just as quickly to maintain their lead. Asda disputed the findings, saying that prices at its supermarket forecourts specifically remained market-leading. According to its numbers, it sold fuel at its courts for 147.78 pence per litre in May, cheaper than its rivals. Explaining the higher prices at smaller shops, Asda said that its rates were in line with local market competition. Asda was the price leader in the supermarket fuel sector in May, and we remain focused on providing our customers with the best value at the pumps as we grow in the convenience sector. Supermarket chain doubled down on its claims to offer the cheapest fuel prices after it was bought out by the Issa Brothers EG Group last year. Average fuel prices in the UK have been climbing again due to rising global oil prices, although they were expected to fall slightly in the coming weeks. The RAC said wholesale fuel prices were already coming down, but that this was not being reflected at the pumps. With only a few exceptions, there doesn't appear to be much in the way of price competition taking place. The Post Office's most senior in-house lawyer, when it fought the landmass case by Alan Bates and other sub-postmasters, has been challenged in Australia after she refused to appear before the public inquiry into the Horizon scandal. A team questioned Jane McLeod, who was the Post Office's general counsel between 2015 and 2019, while she was walking her dog outside her home in Sydney. She replied with no comment when asked why she wasn't attending. She had been due to give evidence this week. It's unsurprising, but it speaks volumes, says Joe Hamilton, one of the wrongly convicted former sub-postmasters. If she was determined to help the inquiry, she'd be there. Born in Australia, Jane McLeod returned to live there in 2020. Last month, Sir Wyn Williams, chair of the Post Office Horizon IT inquiry, revealed that while Miss McLeod had submitted a witness statement, she had decided not to give oral evidence despite being asked to do so. The inquiry heard that the reason offered by Miss McLeod's lawyers was that given the passage of time, she considered her written statement was the best evidence she could offer. Sir Wyn said that even before seeing her written evidence, he decided that Miss McLeod was an important witness from whom he wished to hear in person. He added that despite the offer to have her travel and accommodation expenses covered, Miss McLeod has made it clear that she will not cooperate with the inquiry by providing oral evidence, either in person or via video link. However, Sir Wyn explained that his options to force her to attend were limited because she lived abroad. Under the Inquiries Act 2005, witnesses can be legally compelled to give evidence, but this only applies to UK nationals. In her written statement to the inquiry, Miss McLeod says, "I'm very aware that the decisions in which I was involved during my time at Post Office Limited regarding the group litigation and the investigation of Horizon's performance and robustness have had implications for many sub-postmasters and their families." She adds, "I regret that this had to happen and apologise to those she affected for the adverse outcomes they had suffered." Jane McLeod was the General Counsel at the Post Office, covering the period when it fought sub-postmasters in court in the landmark litigation led by Alan Bates. Giving evidence last month, the former boss of the Post Office, Paula Venables, named Jane McLeod as one of the senior executives she had trusted to give her information when asked by Sam Stone, KC, to list those who had let her down. Miss Venables also recounted asking Miss McLeod why they were proceeding with a court case against sub-postmasters, which she said had felt completely wrong. She told the inquiry that after first suggesting the Post Office would most likely settle the cases, Miss McLeod's view had been that the court case was the only way to resolve this. Earlier this year, an investigation showed that the Post Office had evidence in 2017 that losses could be due to errors in the Horizon IT system or remote tampering. In March, in response to the story, Jane McLeod gave a statement saying that she supported the ongoing public inquiry into the Post Office scandal and was assisting it. Google must face a £13.6 billion lawsuit alleging it had too much power over the online advertising market, a court has ruled. The case brought by a group called Ad Tech Collective Action LLP alleges the search engine behaved in an anti-competitive way which caused online publishers in the UK to lose money. Google parents company Alphabet called the case incoherent in its attempts to get the legal action dropped, but the Competitions Appeal Tribunal in London has ruled the case can now go to trial. This is a decision of major importance to the victims of Google's anti-competitive conduct in AdTech, said former Ofcom director Claudio Pollock, now a partner in AdTech Collective Action. Google will now have to answer for its practices in a full trial. However, Google's legal director Oliver Bethel described the lawsuit as speculative and opportunistic. "We'll oppose it vigorously and on the facts," he added in a statement. The case concerns advertising technology, usually shortened to AdTech, which decides which online adverts people see, as well as how much they cost to publish. Hosting such adverts is a huge source of revenue for many websites. AdTech Collective Action says digital advertising spend reached $490 billion in 2021. It is also an extremely valuable industry for Google because it dominates web search so heavily. At the core of the claim is the allegations that Google is abusing that dominance, reducing the income websites get. AdTech Collective Action says Google has engaged in what is known as self-preferencing, in other words, promoting its own products and services more prominently than that of its rivals. It says that means publishers end up getting less money for the ads they host, as well as having to pay very high fees to Google. I look forward to working with our legal and economic advisors to deliver compensation for years during which the relevant markets did not provide a competitive outcome for the UK publishing market. But it will be a long time before any of this is resolved. It has already taken 18 months to get to this point, and no court date has been set. The case is what is known as opt-out, meaning all relevant UK publishers are included unless they indicate otherwise. It is being funded by an unknown third party, and says UK publishers who form part of the claim will not pay costs to participate. It comes as Google faces probes by regulators in the UK, Europe and US into its ad tech business, while the firm has already faced fines valued at billions of pounds from the European Commission over what it labelled anti-competitive behaviours. A George Cross recipient and former Royal Marine has reportedly been held in Dubai after being accused of spying. Former Lance Corporal Matt Croucher was arrested on the 4th of November, the Times newspaper has reported. The 40-year-old from Solihull, West Midlands, was charged with internationally and illegally accessing a telecommunications network. He has been released from jail but is unable to travel home as his passport has been seized. The Foreign, Commonwealth and Development Office, FCDO, has confirmed it is supporting a British man in the UAE and is in contact with the local authorities. Mr. Croucher, now a security consultant, was questioned on his links to the UK Ministry of Defence. In a statement, his family said that they were suffering from immense stress and the case was made up and ridiculous. They said, "We shocked at the set of circumstances which have played out over the last 7 months." Matt was due to only be away for a couple of weeks, returning through Dubai after working in the Middle East on his way home. "We don't understand why it's taking the Dubai authorities so long to process this case, being constantly told it should be resolved in a week or two, a case we believe to be made up and ridiculous." Mr. Croucher was interrogated for 6 hours by Dubai's Police Criminal Investigation Department, CID, and accused of being a spy, according to a friend of Mr. Croucher's, who spoke to The Times. They retrieved an electronic device he claimed he used for security penetration testing in the course of his normal day-to-day security work, from his possessions after obtaining a warrant. He was jailed for 4 days before being released under investigation. It was understood there was insufficient evidence for the public prosecutor to progress with the charge. However, the Dubai authorities confiscated his phone, passport and internet banking access device, which means he is stuck in the country with no money. During his military career, he received one of the highest decorations for his acts of bravery while deployed in Helmand Province, Afghanistan in 2008. He threw himself onto an exploding grenade to save the lives of his reconnaissance troop patrol, only surviving because his rucksack and body armour took the force of the blast. He was part of the reconnaissance troop in Helmand Province, Afghanistan in February when the incident happened. A George Cross is awarded only rarely for acts of the most conspicuous courage in circumstances of extreme danger. 10 people have been charged in connection with the largest single seizure of prescription drugs in the UK to date. Greater Manchester Police said drugs worth £2 million were found in a premises on Rugby Street in Cheetham Hill in November 2022. It said 10 people have now been charged with conspiracy to supply Class B drugs, conspiracy to supply Class C drugs, and conspiracy to conceal criminal property. They are due to appear at Manchester Magistrates Court on the 23rd of July. The top Treasury civil servant has said the Conservatives' assessment of Labour's tax plans should not be presented as having been produced by the civil service. In a letter to the Labour Party 2 days ago, Treasury Permanent Secretary James Bowler said the calculation of £38 billion of uncosted spending used by the Tories includes costs beyond those provided by the civil service. The letter risks undermining Rishi Sunak's claim in Tuesday evening's head-to-head debate that Labour's plans would mean £2,000 of tax rises per working household. Shadow Chancellor Rachel Reeves accused the Prime Minister of lying. Labour has no plans to increase taxes on working people, reiterating that the party has ruled out increasing the rate of income tax, national insurance and VAT. Despite the debate itself, Labour leader Sir Keir Starmer dismissed the figures as absolute garbage. Treasury Minister Laura Trott stood by the claims and rejected the suggestion Mr Sunak had lied about Labour's tax plans. Ms Trott insisted independent analysis had identified a black hole in Labour's spending plans. This is underpinned overwhelmingly by Treasury analysis, so if people think Labour are going to win this election, they need to start saving. However, in a letter to Labour's Darren Jones, Mr Bowler wrote, "As you will expect, civil servants were not involved in the production or presentation of the Conservative Party's documents, Labour's tax rises, or in the calculation of the total figure used. The £38 billion figure used in the Conservative Party's publication includes costs beyond those provided by the civil service." Mr Bowler added that he had reminded ministers and advisers that any costings derived from other sources or produced by other organisations should not be presented as having been produced by the civil service. The UK's official statistics regulator said it was looking into the Conservatives' claim. The Office for Statistics Regulation, which is the independent regulatory arm of the UK Statistics Authority, is investigating, but it is not known precisely how long that would take. An investigation can be prompted by a complaint, and when an inquiry is complete, its conclusion becomes public. A Conservative Party spokesperson said, "We were fair to Labour in the production of the Labour tax rises briefing note and used only clear Labour policies, their own costings or official HMT, which is the HM Treasury, costings using the lowest assumptions." Earlier, Energy Secretary Claire Coutinho has said the costings had been signed off by the Permanent Secretary of the Treasury, and if anything, the Tory claim was an underestimate. These are brilliant independent civil servants, and they would not be putting anything dodgy in there. Former head of the Civil Service Lord O'Donnell wrote on X, "Getting civil servants to cost opposition policies in run-up to election needs to stop. In past, both parties have done it. It is an unsavoury practice as assumptions provided by special advisers are biased to make party political scoring points." During a head-to-head debate on ITV on Tuesday evening, Mr Sunak repeatedly claimed Labour's spending plans would mean £2,000 in higher taxes for every working family in our country. The Conservatives came up with the number based on how much they say Labour's spending commitments would cost, dividing this by the number of UK households with at least one person working. It covers a period of 4 years. While Mr Sunak suggested the costings had been worked out by impartial civil servants, they're based on assumptions made by politically appointed special advisers. The claim went unchallenged for about 20 minutes, but Sir Keir later called it nonsense. Asked why Sir Keir did not use the letter to rebut Mr Sunak's attacks during the debate, Ms Reeves said the Labour leader was really clear that what the PM said was utter garbage. She added, "I don't think Keir Starmer expected the Prime Minister to lie in the debate last night." The 2,000 figure is first used by the Conservatives in an advertising campaign in May. The UK is at risk of uncontrolled chemicals which could harm people and the environment, say experts. The Royal Society of Chemistry (RSC) has called for the establishment of a chemicals agency to take charge of the regulation of chemicals in the UK. It said the rise in the use of pollutants, often referred to as forever chemicals, is an example of where regulation is falling through the cracks. The government has been approached for comment. RSC said they decided to make a public intervention after waiting for more than 4 years for clarity on how chemicals should be regulated, following the UK's exit from the EU. Prior to 2020, the UK and the 27 current EU countries worked in tandem to research and monitor chemicals and set rules around their use. Following Brexit, the UK has undertaken sole responsibility for chemical regulation domestically, but there have been delays establishing a new system. The current regulatory regime for chemicals in the UK is not fit for purpose, failing to support innovation or to adequately protect our waterways, soil, air and built environment, said Professor Gillian Reid, President of the Royal Society of Chemistry. Last month, the government announced it was consulting on a new chemicals registration process intended to be the key mechanism by which the UK will track which chemicals are being imported into the country. The process was intended to be in place from the day the UK officially left the EU, 4 years ago in 2020. The RSC said the delay is impacting dozens of industries which operate across the UK and EU markets, from cosmetics to food manufacturing to agriculture. Stephanie Metzger, policy advisor at the RSC and co-author of the report, said businesses are in this limbo phase. This makes it really difficult for them to plan financially what they're going to invest in and decide what research they might want to do. The Chemical Industries Association, CIA, the trade body for businesses working with chemicals, agreed that its members needed clarity, but said it was premature to call for a chemicals agency, claiming it would merely delay the government process further. The Royal Society of Chemistry maintains that a centralised chemicals agency will also help to coordinate scientific studies. At the moment, the RSC claims research into different chemicals can take place across more than 5 government agencies, leading to fragmentation, duplication of efforts and a lack of clarity, according to Professor Reid. In addition, the civil service is under-resourced and struggling to recruit and train skilled staff, making it difficult for government to keep up to date with the latest developments in chemicals and testing. In the last few years, there has been growing evidence of the presence of potentially toxic chemicals like PFAS or parafluoroalkyl and polyfluoroalkyl substances building up in UK soil and waterways. High doses of these pollutants, also known as forever chemicals, have been linked to serious health concerns, including cancer and fertility issues. Last week, researchers at the University of Cardiff found traces of a forever chemical which had never been manufactured in the UK, present in an otter population in northeast England. Dr. Elizabeth Chadwick from Cardiff University, who co-authored the research paper, said a ban on forever chemicals is challenging because they are widely used and there are more than 15,000 types in circulation. I think we need to do more work to really understand how the different groups of PFAS may have slightly different toxic effects to help inform the regulation. Which ones do we really need to focus on first? The EU is currently researching a possible ban on forever chemicals by 2026. Last year, the UK government also announced it would develop a strategy for PFAS, but no paper has yet to be published. Russian hackers are behind the cyber attack on a number of major London hospitals, according to the former chief executive of the National Cyber Security Centre. Kieran Martin said that the criminal group were looking for money by targeting the pathology services firm Synovis. Hospitals declared a critical incident on Tuesday after the ransomware attack, which affected blood transfusions and test results. It also led to operations being cancelled and emergency patients being diverted elsewhere. King's College Hospital, Guy's and St Thomas's, including the Royal Brompton and the Evelina London Children's Hospital, and primary care services are among those affected. Mr. Martin said, "We believe it is a Russian group of cyber criminals who call themselves Quillin." He said the group, which operates on the dark web, operated freely from within Russia. The cybersecurity expert explained that the group had previously attacked automotive companies, Australian courts, and the big issue in the UK. He said they're simply looking for money, but said the British government had a policy of not paying ransoms. The criminal group were unlikely to have known they would cause healthcare disruption when they organised the attack. There are two types of ransomware attack. One is when they steal a load of data and they try and extort you into paying so that it isn't released, but this case is different. It's the more serious type of ransomware, where the system just doesn't work. Mr. Martin said the attack was one of the most serious that we've seen in this country. When asked about patient data, he said, "It's not really a question of data in this one, it's a question of the services. The criminals are threatening to publish data, but they always do that. Here the priority is the restoration of services." One patient from London said that he was just moments from receiving a heart operation when the hospital cancelled the procedure due to the cyber attack. Oliver Dowson said the surgeon explained there was an issue with the blood bank. He said, "When you've been sitting there since the crack of dawn in a smock, waiting to have open heart surgery, however calm I try to feel, you still get a bit nervous." He was upset and angry with his procedure being rescheduled to next week. The NHS apologised for the inconvenience caused to patients and said it was working with the National Cybersecurity Centre to understand the impact. Synovis said it was unable to comment further on the attack. First Minister Vaughan Gething looks set to lose a vote of no confidence in his leadership later after one of his members said that two Labour colleagues are off sick. The Conservatives called the Senate vote after months of rows over donations to Mr Gething's leadership campaign from a company owned by a man previously convicted of environmental offences. Vicky Howes, the chair of the Labour group of members of the Senate, MSS, has said that two members are currently unwell. She said Vaughan Gething would not stand down if he lost, saying it was a gimmick and it was up to the voting public to decide who is in the Senate. Mr Gething would not have to resign if he loses. Plaid Cymru accused Mr Gething of treating the Senate with contempt. It is believed that the two MSS off sick are Hannah Blyth, who was sacked from the Welsh Government by Vaughan Gething, and Lee Waters, the former Transport Minister. Mr Waters had previously called for the donations to be returned. Neither were in the Senate chamber on Tuesday, and it is unclear whether the two MSS would be able to vote remotely. Neither have proxy votes granted for long-term absence. With Labour holding exactly half the seats in the 60-seat Welsh Parliament, it needs every backbencher to support the First Minister. The Conservatives have refused to agree to a pairing arrangement where some of their members would not vote to cover for Labour absences. The motion could be successful if at least one Labour Senate member either rebels, abstains or does not take part. All opposition parties, including Plaid Cymru and Welsh Liberal Democrat Jane Dodds, are expected to back the Tory motion. Cynon Valley MS Vicky Howes said, "This vote that will be being held this afternoon is just a gimmick by the Tories, who are desperate to deflect from their disastrous 14 years in government. This is a party that will do anything to shift the focus elsewhere when we should be focusing on a general election." She said Labour had always paired with the Tories to cancel out the impact of any members who are absent. "We do have two Labour members who are currently unwell. The Tories knew that before they tabled this motion, which, as of yesterday, we've been told that they are refusing to pair with us." She added that this is not a binding vote. The binding votes are the votes that are cast at the ballot box in the Senate election. Asked if Mr Gissing would have to quit if he lost the vote, she said he wouldn't have to resign because he has just won a democratic vote to be leader of Welsh Labour. Mr Gethin has been First Minister for 77 days, since he won the Welsh Labour leadership contest in March. Why is Vaughan Gething facing a no-confidence vote? Vaughan Gething won the Welsh Labour leadership election in March after a campaign dominated by the donation of £200,000 from Dawson Environmental Group. The company is owned by David John Neal, a man given suspended sentences in 2013 for the illegal dumping of waste and in 2017 of not cleaning it up. It emerged during the leadership contest that Mr Gethin had lobbied on behalf of one of Mr Neal's companies prior to his first leadership run in 2018. Public reaction from Labour politicians was largely muted during the campaign itself, but Mr Gethin has failed to prevent private anger from rising to the surface. There are calls from within Labour for the party not to take any remaining money from Dawson, as it normally would with leftover funds from campaign contests. Throughout, the First Minister has said that he has followed all the rules for political donations. In a separate row, Mr Gethin found himself having to defend a message he sent during the pandemic, where the then Health Minister told colleagues he was deleting texts from ministerial group chat. He later sacked Hannah Blythen, alleged she was the source of a leak to the Nation Camru news site. She denied it and has not spoken in the Senedd since. Opposition parties have demanded evidence, which Mr Gethin has declined to provide. All three issues, the donation, the message and the sacking, have been cited by the Tories for why it has brought the motion. Andrew R.T. Davies has said, 1. There's a question of judgment, 2. There's a question about transparency, and 3. There's an issue around honesty. He said it was exceptionally unlikely in any parliamentary democracy on a confidence issue that a pairing system would kick in. Mr Davies said the pairing system were there for more mundane votes. Plaid Cymru's leader, Run-Up Iorwerth, told the same programme that the vote was up to Labour. Are there Labour members who are wrestling with their conscience? Absolutely, we know there are. A Plaid Cymru spokesman said Vaughan Gething was not voted in as First Minister by the people of Wales, but by Labour members in the Senate. By denying the legitimacy of a vote of no confidence in the First Minister, Labour are treating the Senate with contempt. What is a non-binding vote? Wednesday's decision in the Senate is not a formal confidence vote in the government, as set out in the legislation that governs the Welsh Parliament. It would need 6 Senedd members to call for one, and if successful could trigger a series of events that would lead to an election. The opposition has not called such a vote, probably because it is unlikely that any Labour Senedd members would bring down their own government. Instead, the vote is on a motion which says Mr Gethin does not have the confidence of the Senedd. Mr Gethin said in the Senedd on Tuesday that it is not binding. This is legally true. He will not need to resign as soon as the vote is passed. But the politics is very different, and failing to corral Labour Senedd members to fully support him would demonstrate a loss of authority that will likely damage his leadership. Instagram is testing adverts that users cannot skip past. The social media platform currently allows people to swipe or scroll past adverts that appear in its main feed of images and videos, as well as in its stories and reels feeds, but it is now trialling a feature called Ad Break, which users say they cannot flick past as usual. Images shared online show a timer which counts down to 0 before normal functionality can resume. Sometimes you may need to view an ad before you can keep browsing, the Meta-owned platform tells those who click for more information. Instagram has confirmed that a trial is underway. We're always testing formats that can drive value for advertisers, it said in a statement, adding that it would provide further updates if the test resulted in permanent format changes. In a subsequent statement, Meta said it was always experimenting with new products and ad solutions in line with the evolving consumer trends and business needs. It remains to be seen if the trial pleases advertisers, but it certainly does not appear to have gone down well with users. One person on Threads called the move bonkers, adding that it seems like an aggressively pushy move to earn more ad dollars for Meta. Others have raised the prospect of boycotting the platform. We'll simply not be scrolling, said one ex-user. Meta is not the first big tech firm to force people to watch adverts. YouTube is known for showing non-skippable ads to users watching videos on its platform or TV app who do not pay for its ad-free premium tier. Advertisers can target YouTube viewers with 15 to 30 second long, non-skippable promotional videos that appear before, during or after other videos if they want to view their entire message. They can also advertise using similarly non-skippable bumper ads, shorter videos of up to 6 seconds long, on YouTube videos. Some users have responded by turning to ad blocking tools and browser extensions as a way around adverts that interrupt videos on the platform. Google, YouTube's parent company, is in turn trying to clamp down on ad blockers. However, it is not clear that forcing users to watch more ads actually helps companies' bottom lines. A study carried out by TikTok, published in January, suggested forcing viewers to watch adverts might actually lead to less engagement. More than 70% of its participants said they were more likely to engage with the experience of an advert if there was an option to skip it. Judges are being asked to overturn an 87-year-old rule in a move which could allow more rape allegations to reach court. Scotland's top law officer is seeking the change after 2 sexual offence trials last year ended in acquittals. The ruling, which dates back to 1937, limits what can be done with statements made by an alleged victim shortly after an alleged crime. The Lord Advocate Dorothy Bain KC is asking for that to be overturned. She wants the judges to agree that such statements can be used as a separate source of evidence that a crime has taken place and the person accused of committing it was responsible. Her request is scheduled to be heard over 2 days at the High Court in Edinburgh. The issue at the heart of all of this is corroboration, a unique cornerstone of Scotland's criminal law for decades. The requirement for corroboration means that there has to be evidence from at least 2 sources to prove the essential facts of a case. When the alleged offence is rape, prosecutors need corroborated evidence that the accused was the perpetrator, that the physical act took place and there was no consent. Campaigners have long claimed that corroboration is a barrier to justice, particularly in sexual offence cases. Others argue it offers protection against miscarriages of justice. The ruling in 1937 was made after a man called Henry Morton successfully challenged his conviction for indecent assault. Morton was found guilty of indecently assaulting a woman in a tenement close in Glasgow in 1936. She was the only person who identified him as her attacker, and the conviction was quashed on appeal the following year. At the time, the judges who heard the case ruled that a statement made by an alleged victim shortly after the alleged offence could only be used to show that they had been consistent in their account of what happened. In other words, it could support the contention that they had been saying the same thing all along, but nothing more. That ruling has been applied ever since. Last year, the Lord Advocate secured an important change in the rules on evidence of distress in rape cases. She has followed that up by asking the High Court to rule that the judges in 1937 were wrong. Dorothy Bain will argue that statements taken from alleged victims shortly after the offence should be allowed to corroborate other evidence that the crime happened and the accused was the perpetrator. Law lecturer Dr. Andrew Tickell from Glasgow Caledonian University said it would amount to a very significant change. This would effectively be the end of corroboration as we've known it for almost 100 years in Scotland. This is a huge intervention in the justice system. It would mean we could rely on the evidence of a single witness potentially to corroborate far more than they can under the current law. If the Lord Advocate wins, it would mean more cases involving rape and other sexual offences will go to court, although no one can say how many. Dr. Tickell said that would amount to a significant change to Scots law without the approval of the Scottish Parliament and might increase the pressure on the court system already facing a major backlog in cases. Corroboration is seen in 2 different ways. Some people see it as a safeguard against wrongful convictions, but other people see it as a barrier to cases getting into court. If you have a lower corroboration threshold, it means you can bring more cases forward. That doesn't mean that the jury will convict, it doesn't mean they'll be convinced beyond reasonable doubt, but it means the cases can get to the court. The Lord Advocate's request comes in the wake of 2 cases last year, which resulted in no not proven verdicts, another unique feature of Scots law. The first trial concerned a woman in Edinburgh who told passers-by and the police that she had been raped by a man she met in a nightclub. The second involved the alleged abuse of 2 boys by their babysitter. Whatever the judges decide, it will not affect the outcome of either trial. As the case in 1937 was heard by 7 judges, the Lord Advocate's arguments will be considered by a panel of 9. It is believed to be the first time in more than 40 years that so many judges have been brought together to reach such a decision. Senior defence lawyers will say that the law should not be substantially changed. The judges will issue their decision at a later date. In future of corroboration has been debated before. In 2011, a report into Scotland's justice system recommended that corroborated evidence should no longer be required in criminal cases, although the Scottish Government later decided not to make the change. That review was led by Lord Colloway, now the Lord Justice General, the country's most senior judge. He will be one of the 9 who will decide whether the 1937 ruling has had its day. TikTok says it is addressing a cyber attack that targeted brands and celebrities, including Paris Hilton and CNN. However, the video sharing app said that a very limited number of accounts have been compromised. It added that it was working with users to restore access to their accounts. TikTok, which is owned by Chinese company ByteDance, did not share further details on the cyber attack, such as how it was carried out. A TikTok spokesperson said Miss Hilton's account was targeted, but it was not compromised. The reality TV star, who has more than 10 million followers on TikTok, is an active user of the platform. The account of news broadcaster CNN has been compromised. However, we have been collaborating closely with CNN to restore account access and implement enhanced security measures to safeguard their account moving forward. We are dedicated to maintaining the integrity of the platform and will continue to monitor for any further inauthentic activity. The news comes as TikTok is facing a ban in the US unless it is sold by its Chinese parent company. TikTok has millions of users worldwide but has faced questions over the security of users' data and its links to the government in Beijing. It is also emerging as a new social media battleground for the US elections. Earlier this month, Donald Trump joined TikTok despite attempting to ban it on national security grounds during his presidency. Trump, who has amassed more than 5 million followers since launching his account on Saturday, said he will use every tool available to speak directly with the American people. President Joe Biden is also using the platform to campaign for re-election in November, but he has only picked up around 350,000 followers, far fewer than his rival. The chief financial officer of the Epoch Times news outlet has been arrested over his alleged involvement in a massive money laundering scheme. Federal prosecutors allege that Bill Guan, age 61, participated in a global plot to launder at least $67 million or £52 million of illegal cash to benefit himself and the Epoch Times. According to the indictment, Mr. Guan led the outlet's Make Money Online team, which used cryptocurrency to purchase tens of millions worth of crime proceeds. Mr. Guan has not yet entered a plea. If convicted, he could spend more than 30 years in prison. In a statement on Monday evening, the Epoch Times said that it intends to and willfully cooperate with any investigation dealing with the allegations against Mr. Guan. Although Mr. Guan is innocent and until proven guilty beyond a reasonable doubt, the company has suspended him until this matter is resolved, news outlet said. It did not respond to specific questions about the Make Money Online team referenced by prosecutors. In the 12-page indictment, federal prosecutors detailed the alleged plan, which they say began around 2020. The plot, prosecutors said, was simple. Members of the Make Money Online MMO team would purchase crime proceeds via cryptocurrency at a discount and transfer those proceeds into bank accounts held by entities affiliated with newspapers. The illegal proceeds would ultimately be moved back into the Epoch Times accounts through tens of thousands of layered transactions, including through prepaid debit accounts and financial accounts opened using stolen identification information. According to the indictment, for years the scheme worked to enrich the Epoch Times, pumping tens of millions of dollars into the paper. Coinciding with the time Mr. Guan came up with the alleged scheme, the outlet's internal accounting showed its annual revenue balloon by some 410%. From $50 million in 2019 to roughly $62 million the following year. When banks asked Mr. Guan where the surge of money was coming from, he lied, claiming that the funds came from donations. Mr. Guan has been charged with 1 count of conspiring to commit money laundering and 2 counts of bank fraud. Prosecutors noted these charges do not relate to the media company, the Epoch Times, news-gathering activities. Founded in 2000, the Epoch Times began as a small, low-budget newspaper handed out for free in New York. It was started by Chinese Americans affiliated with a religious group called Falun Gong. In the years since, it has grown into reportedly one of the US's most powerful conservative news organizations and a home to conspiracy theories, right-wing misinformation, and a sharp opposition to the Chinese Communist Party. When Victoria Arthur's child benefit was not paid on Monday, her immediate concern was that she would not be able to afford nappies and milk for her 4-month-old daughter. Like many, the mother 3 from Womford relies on the £238 she gets each month to pay for essentials for her kids, but a payment processing error at HMRC has meant that almost 580,000 claimants did not receive their money as planned, sparking panic for many families. Unable to reach the tax agency and with nothing in her bank account, Victoria was forced to call the council to get a food bank voucher, which she spent on formula, food and cereal. I couldn't believe it when I woke up on Monday. There wasn't a penny of child benefit in my account, and no explanation, no automated text message. I tried calling HMRC, but they weren't accepting calls. It was so stressful, we were left in the dark. The tax agency has apologised and said the missed sum will be paid on Wednesday. It also said anyone who incurred a loss as a result of a glitch can apply for redress through its complaint system. But there have been an outpouring of anger on social media. Some parents have said that they were left unable to afford food or pay bills because of the error. HMRC has also been criticised over its communications after telling worried parents not to call its helplines on Monday and to check social media for updates instead. John Payne, a single parent of 3 children, 2 of whom have special needs, only realised that his child benefit had not been paid when he got through a notification from his bank saying that a direct debit had not gone through. Initially, he was confused. Then he was panicked. The 32-year-old relies on child benefit to pay for his daughter's ballet lessons, food bills and days out with the kids. The last year, as money's got tighter, I'm using it more and more to pay certain bills too. John was also unable to get answers from the HMRC directly, much to his frustration. I had to find out what had happened on Facebook, and they didn't say we are going to sort this out in the next couple of days. It was just keep checking social media, so I was worrying about it all day. Luckily, he was given breathing space to pay the direct debit he missed on Monday, although he was fined for a late bill payment and will have to claim it back through HMRC's complaints process. People can claim a child benefit if they are responsible for bringing up a child under 16 or under 20 if they are in improved education or training. Only one parent gets the payment per child and there is no limit to how many children you can claim for. The benefit, which is usually paid every 4 weeks, is vital for many families on low incomes. Parents can claim £25.60 a week for one child and £16.95 for each subsequent child. Megan Dragon, aged 26, said she was shocked when her benefit did not arrive because it usually is very reliable. The mum of 4 from Northamptonshire, who does not work, said the money was crucial as her husband's income alone was not enough to cover us. We need it for fuel, food, our mortgage. The family almost missed a mortgage payment on Monday because of the delay but managed to get a 3-day extension from their lender. Megan also struggled to work out why the benefit had not turned up, only finding out after stumbling on a thread on the networking site Mumsnet. I was disappointed and annoyed with HMRC as it seemed that people had warned them about this on Friday evening and Saturday morning and they'd ignored it. It was probably avoidable. She said the family was now back on track. We are in a really fortunate position, but others aren't so lucky. McDonald's no longer has the exclusive right to use the label Big Mac in reference to chicken burgers sold in the European Union after a ruling by the EU's highest court. The American fast food popularised the nickname for large burger sandwiches, registered it as a trademark in the EU in 1996. But following a legal challenge from the rival chain in Ireland, other companies will now be free to use the name Mac to sell poultry products or in their chain's names. The European Court of Justice found that McDonald's could not show it had made genuine use of the trademark for a continuous period of 5 years. McDonald's loses the EU trademark Big Mac in respect of poultry products, the judges ruled. McDonald's noted in a statement that the court's decision did not affect its right to use the Big Mac trade name, but it does open the door for other chains to use the name, including Supermac, the firm that bought the challenge. Supermac, founded in 1978 in Galway, sells beef and chicken burgers and chicken nuggets at 120 red and white branded outlets across Ireland. It has been embroiled in a 7-year legal battle with the US chain over the right to use brand terms, including Mac. Supermac's managing director, Pat McDonough, said the ruling displayed a common-sense approach to the use of trademarks by large multinationals. Supermax accuses McDonald's of bullying smaller firms through the defence of its trademarks, aiming to stifle competition. The dispute goes back to 2017, when McDonald's blocked Mr. McDonough from registering Supermax as a trademark to pave the way for expansion outside Ireland. Mr. McDonough countered that McDonald's was not using its trademark for restaurants, so other firms should not be blocked from using the term Mac in their names. We knew when we took on this battle that it was a David vs. Goliath scenario. We wholeheartedly welcome this judgment as a vindication of small businesses everywhere that stand up to powerful global entities. McDonald's said our iconic Big Mac is loved by customers all across Europe, and we're excited to continue to proudly serve local communities as we've done for decades. The chain did not say whether it planned to appeal against the decision. The ECJ's ruling revokes McDonald's trademark for restaurants and for poultry products, retaining it only in reference to the red meat burgers it originally referred to. Supermax remains in dispute with McDonald's over the trademark in the UK, since post-Brexit EU trademark law no longer applies in the UK. Stars including Keira Knightley and Ruth Wilson have signed an open letter calling on firms to support a crackdown on bullying and sexual harassment. The letter urges creative organisations to help fund a new watchdog, the Creative Industry Independent Standards Authority (CIISA), which will investigate complaints in the music, film, theatre and TV industries. Bullying and harassment claims in the industry continue abound, the letter said. It added that the new body is very necessary to help to drive change. Actresses Cara Delevingne, Carey Mulligan, Rebecca Ferguson, Naomi Harris and Emerald Fennell have also put their name on the letter. Male actors and performers including Guy Rummers, Johnny Sweet, Joshua Maguire and Rob Corsill have also signed. The BBC, Sky, ITV, Channel 4 and Viacom already made an initial payment to support CIISA. We are calling on you to make your final commitment to the creation of CISA to keep our creative industries safe. So many of us in this industry would have loved to have an objective outside body that we could go to for advice, for mediation, and in the very extreme circumstances, that we might need some outside body to hold people accountable for the bad behaviour or bad practices that sometimes happen on our sets, on our stages, behind the scenes. The letter said creative industry professionals from film, TV, music and theatre had recognised the need for such a body. It added it hoped that the new watchdog would become the blueprint across the globe for keeping our creative industries safe. We want to thank these organisations that have already taken the bold step to make the final financial commitment, and we urge those that have yet to do so to join us so that we can turn CISA into a reality. Last week, the trade union Back2 published research suggesting that 92% of creative workers had witnessed or experienced bullying or harassment at work. It found that 1 in 5 people working in the UK's creative industries have experienced a serious sexual assault while at work. Back2 have also called on broadcasters, studios and streamers to financially back CISA. It's no secret that sexual harassment remains a scourge on the creative industries, said head of Back2 Philippa Charles. The mental toll and wide-reaching impacts of workplace sexual harassment can be absolutely devastating. Ms. Charles said that while a lot of warm words have been heard, it was clear that a radical step change is needed for the sector to meaningfully tackle the issue. While it's been pleasing to see organisations from across the sector signal their support for the creative industries, Independent Standards Authority, this needs to now be backed up by meeting CISA's financial ask of no more than 0.1% of organisations' annual UK turnover. This will be critical to ensure the authority moves from its development to operational phase. The idea of creating a bullying and harassment watchdog for the creative industries was first floated in 2021 in the wake of the #MeToo movement. CISA is now in the process of finalising its governance, funding and business plan with the aim to start providing some services by the end of 2024. Did you know there are 2 types of ransomware attacks? The first is one when they steal a lot of data and they try and extort you into paying so that it isn't released. But in the case of what happened with the hospitals in London, it's actually a different case. It's where it actually shuts down a lot of the operating facilities and makes it impossible to get those facilities back up and running, which can cause infrastructure issues, and in the case of the hospitals, lack communication between the necessary departments. In this case, it happened to be the blood banks. The requirement for corroboration means that there has to be evidence from at least 2 sources to prove the essential facts of the case. When the alleged offence is rape, prosecutors need corroborated evidence that the accused was the perpetrator, that the physical act took place, and that there was no consent.